Welcome to DIYEasyCrafts.com. How to easily sew leather by hand using a saddle stitch. Now the saddle stitch is great for sewing together knife sheaths and a variety of other leatherworking projects. It's a very easy stitch and the end result is really good looking as well as a nice tight seam. Now, I'm going to start by making a groove in the leather. You don't have to do this. This is a very basic leather working tool, and it creates a groove that the thread will sit in. So the finished product, the thread will not be above the leather and it won't fray during use. Another basic leather tool is just a stamp which dictates where each stitch is going to be. It's a very uniform size, very easy to follow. Neither one of those is mandatory. This is a little trick of the trade. When sewing thick leather, I find it a lot easier to use a 1/16 diameter drill bit and actually drill those holes. So what I would do if this wasn't just a demonstration is I would glue the two pieces of leather together with rubber cement, and then I would run that 1/16 diameter drill bit through each of those predetermined spacers. Now probably the hardest part of saddle stitching is really just threading the needle. Basically you thread through the eye of the needle as you would with any sewing, and then you take the thread and you pierce it through the tip of the needle. Now, these needles are not very sharp, so you're not gonna pierce your finger. I like to do it twice. So you take another loop of the thread up and you pierce it right through the tip. Then you grab all of that thread and you pull it back down over the eye. And you pull this tight like a slip knot and just work it forward right back up against the needle. And you're going to want to do this to both ends of the thread. So we'll be working basically with two needles for this saddle stitch. A little hard to have seen that on the video, so I'm just going to show you a couple of still photographs. Basically this is just putting the thread right through the eye of the needle, piercing it once through the tip, piercing it twice through the tip, and then you just pull that entire thread right back down over the eye. The amount of thread that you're going to need to sew your project is approximately 2.5 times the length of the project. You definitely don't want to fall short on thread. This is called a stitching pony, and I just made a very simple one, and I clamped its two 2x4s cut with 45-degree angles, and I just clamp it right into my vise. It's just a nice way of holding the leather that you're working on in place so that you have both hands free to do the stitching. Now the saddle stitching is very easy. We're going to start by putting the needle through the first hole and evening up the thread so that you have the same amount of thread on both sides. Then we're going to take one needle and go through the next hole, and then we're going to go through from the opposite side that same hole and pull it tight. And we're just going to repeat this process. So the needle goes in from one side, the needle on the other side goes back out through the exact same hole. And then with the same amount of tension each time, you pull that thread tight. I'm going to show you a couple of different views of it. But this is not rocket science. Very, very simple to do. In one hole, the needle from the opposite side goes out through the same hole, and then you pull it tight. Now, when you're working with a larger piece, of course, there's more thread to pull through, but you get into a rhythm, and it does go fairly quickly. In a minute, I'll just show you how to finish off when you get to the end of the workpiece. I'm just going to basically backstitch a little bit. So now we're coming to the last hole. I'm going to go through from the other side, finishing it off, right? and then we're just going to backstitch a couple of stitches. We're going to back up one hole, in from one side, back out through that same hole. But then you do want to continue with this second needle. You want to end up with both ends of the thread on the back of your workpiece. If it was a knife sheath, you'd want them both to be on the back side of the knife sheath. And then you pull that nice and tight. And then the last step is really just going to be, this is just another image of pulling it tight. And then the last step is going to be to trim that thread nice and close to the workpiece. You can use a scissor, you can use a razor, any way you want to do it. And depending on the thread that you're using, you could burn that end, or you can just leave it just like that. The finished piece, like I said before, is a very good looking stitch. It's very strong. It's perfect for sewing together knife sheaths and a variety of other leather working projects. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Please check us out on the web at DIYEasyCrafts.com. And if you're into knife making, please check us out on Facebook group Knives and Knife Making. Thank you.